Good morning, my friends. So here we are. It is time for yet another devotion. And normally on Mondays, our devotion is based off of Sunday sermon, as it will be the case today. The main difference will be that that may be the case for the next two, possibly even 3 days, because I think that there's a lot we can concentrate and focus on that's important. Uh, and that I feel needs to be addressed because I don't think that it's being properly addressed by the community at large or the church community. I think what has happened is that, as you will see, the people within the church community have chosen their sides, and their side is the side that's right, and therefore they aren't willing to critically look at uh, things that might happen with the people that they are affiliated or aligned with. So let's jump right into scripture text so that you can see what I'm going to talk about today is that the price of conviction. And when we talk about conviction, we're talking about true belief. And we're also going to talk a little bit about acceptance or tolerance as it truly should look, because that word, especially that word tolerance, is thrown around a lot. And it isn't, once again, it isn't examined from what a Christian should see in that word. So let's first, we're going to jump into the text for today, and then we're going to have a little bit of a discussion. So we're going to look at two texts today. We're going to look at Esther chapter 3, verses 3 through 6, and then we're going to look at chapter 4, verse 11. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit about what's happening here. So actually, before we do that, let's stop sharing the screen. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening here. So Esther has now become the queen. She is the first chosen of King Xerxes. Haman, who we are going to meet in just a moment, has been placed as the highest of all the nobles, and as a reward for being placed in that position, people have been told that in his presence they are to kneel and to show honor to him. We will see that there are some who do not do that, and the reason why. Well, what happens is that Haman gets so incensed by this that he asks King Xerxes for the destruction of all the Jewish people. Once again, in our reading, we will see why. And Esther, who of course is Jewish, but that is not known at this time, is asked by her uncle to go and plead on behalf of the Jewish people. And she sends a response to her uncle. All of this is going to be covered in the reading, but the bottom line is that there is a threat to the Jewish people, and Mordecai is going to ask his niece, Esther, to help in this situation. So now let's go to the reading. And actually, let's start at verse 2 here. You know what? I'm going to actually just start from the beginning. Here we go. Okay, after these events, King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agathite, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. All the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. But Mordecai would not kneel down or pay honor. The royal officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" Day after day, they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore, they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet, having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. So what we have here, let's look at some of the lessons that we find here. Now, first of all, I want to point out that Mordecai has decided that he will not obey the law. It is the law, because remember, this is the king. The king has said that it is the law, that this is my highest official, and you will kneel down in his presence and honor him. Now, understand that Mordecai will not do this. Now, what's really important about understanding this is why. Why won't Mordecai do this? This is not an act of disrespect. This is not him saying, I don't like Haman, and so I'm not going to honor him. This is an act of conviction and faith. Because as a Jew, Mordecai is not to kneel down, it is not to prostrate himself before anybody but God. And to do so would be like him elevating Haman to the level of God. And that is the reason why he won't do it. It's not that he doesn't like Haman. It's not that he is disrespecting Haman. It's that he has a conviction. It is an act of conviction and faith. That is the reason why. And the reason that I point this out, the reason that this understanding is so important, it's because it's important for us as Christians, as people of faith, to understand that in a situation where the law is telling us that we must go against our truly held convictions, we are allowed, not only allowed, we are expected to disobey. And so the bottom line is that there are cases, I would say in most cases, rare cases, in which Christians must disobey the civil authority in order to be in line with their faith. Now, there are some important things that, because I know in saying that there are certain segments of Christian society which cheer when they're excited because yes, we have the right and we are expected to stand against the civil authority. Now, there's some caveats that have to be made there. First of all, under normal circumstances, and I said this yesterday in the sermon, Christians, followers of Christ, should be the most law-abiding people. We should be setting that example. We should be those people that are the most respectful of those in authority. Now, understand that being respectful of authority or respectful of someone in a position does not mean that you do not stand against them when you disagree. That some people, for some reason, have come to think that if you respect authority or respect an office, such as the office of a senator or a president, that is not standing against them. You still have your beliefs. What you are respecting is the office. And Christians should be amongst the most law-abiding and respectful. We should be the ones that set that example, except for in those cases in which we are being told that we must go against our convictions. Now, here's the caveat. It has to be a situation which is calling us to go against our convictions, not our deeply held convictions of faith, not our political ideology. Now, understand, if for reasons of ideology, you feel like civil disobedience is necessary, that's fine. That's okay, especially in our society. But what we have to be careful of is not saying that it is an act of faith. Because if you are engaging in civil disobedience because you feel like your ideology, your political ideology is saying that is something that you should do, that is all fine and good. But do not mix that ideology with issues of faith. The difference is that if it is an ideological issue, Christians can disagree. If it is an issue of strongly held faith, most of us should at least be on the same page. And I think we've gotten to the point now where we are mixing faith issues with ideological issues. You can have whatever belief you want on taxes. You can have whatever belief you want on the role of guns in America, the Second Amendment, gun control. You could think that you could be one that believes that the government overstepped with some of the mask mandates and other mandates that took place during the beginning of COVID, or maybe even now. You could be one that believes in the right to protest, and you could even be one that believes in that violence within protests might be necessary at times. I don't know where you stand on those issues, but what I do know is that those are not issues of strongly held faith. They are ideological issues, and you can choose to protest. You can choose to be disobedient. That is a part of your right. That is a part of the American experience, but do not say what you are doing is an act of faith, because in that particular case, it's not. Now, let's give some examples of what are. Now, last week, the Supreme Court had a case in which a Catholic social services organization went and they sued the city of Philadelphia, because the city of Philadelphia said that they would not renew their contract because this Catholic organization would not consider same-sex couples in their approval process. Now, once again, we can be in different places on this, but we also can understand as Christians why a group of people might look at Scripture and say, based on our belief of what God intended for the family to be, we can't do this. That is a strongly held belief in which disobedience would be called for. Let's look at the civil rights movement. In the 1960s, lunch counters were segregated. And they were saying that one group of people is different or better than another group of people. And you could see where people might look at the Bible and see how God views people and say, no, that's not right. I know it's against the law to be at this lunch counter, but I'm going to be here. Deeply held religious beliefs. I don't see, and perhaps I'm open to comment. I don't see where having a disagreement over taxes, whether the tax rate should be at 30% for the highest earners, or whether it should be at 50% for the highest earners. I don't see where that would be a grounds for civil disobedience on biblical grounds. The mask mandates, again, people went in different directions over this, and you can have your stance, you can have your belief, but again, I don't see where we can go to the Bible and say, but no, this is based on my highly held Christian beliefs. The danger that we're getting into at this time, my friends, is we are taking our political ideologies, how we think politically, whether we're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whether we're progressive, whether we're liberal, whether we're conservative, we're taking those things and we are mixing them in that politics into our faith. And that borders on idolatry. Let's go back to the text, because there's something else that we want to see here. We hear this word tolerance a lot. Now, let's look at how this situation could have been handled. Verse 3, the royal officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" Day after day, they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore, they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them he was a Jew. Now, this situation ends. It ends right there if Mordecai simply says, I don't agree with this Mordecai's belief. If Haman would have said, I don't believe with this Mordecai guy's beliefs, I don't like them, but I will tolerate them. I will allow for them to take place because no one's really being harmed. Yeah, I got a few people from a different culture that won't kneel down before me. But is it really worth harming people over? Is it really worth hurting people over? And that's where we need to come off as Christians, because we have a wide range of political beliefs, to extremely conservative to extremely liberal beliefs. And what we have to ask ourselves when we look at that brother or sister that's on the other side of a belief that we are on is, do we attempt to stamp them out, or do we tolerate that belief for the sake of unity? It's a hard question to answer, isn't it? What is harm? What is violence? Those things are being redefined now. But I truly do believe that, again, to go to the Supreme Court case, you have all of these different social service organizations. My belief with the city of Philadelphia would be, okay, so you have this one religious organization that says, well, because of our beliefs, we're not going to do same-sex couples, but you have all of these others. If they were the only one, well, we might have an issue, but they're not. So we within the Christian community, even if you disagree, we should be able to say, okay, I think you're wrong on that. I think you're wrong on some of these other issues, but it's not an issue of faith. Now, what's also important to understand is that when we do stand on our faith, when we do say that our faith tells us that we must disobey, that oftentimes there's still going to be a price to be paid. Let's go back to scripture. And this time we're going to go to chapter 4, verse 11. This is where Mordecai has asked Esther. He said, I want you to go and plead with the king on behalf of the Jews. All the king's officials and people of the royal province know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death unless the king extends the golden scepter to them to spare their lives. But 30 days have passed since I called to go to the king. Understand this, that civil disobedience, even on behalf of our faith, does not mean that there is not a price to pay. There was a price to pay for the people who sat in at the lunch counters. There was a price to pay for those within the civil rights movement that truly believed that what they were doing was not only just from a legal standpoint, but just from a biblical standpoint. There's a price to pay for many of those today on the more conservative side of religious beliefs that stand against government powers. There's a price to pay when you stand up on your firmly held religious convictions. But the fact is that if it is a firmly held religious conviction, we have to be willing to stand with God and stand against the powers that be. The one thing that I hope that you are getting and understanding, though, is to make sure that you aren't taking your own personal ideological beliefs and turning them into issues of faith. Because that is not something that we should be doing. We should find unity in those things that are essential to our faith. And we should allow for liberty in those things that are not. And there will be things that you feel that you should stand up for. There will be things that you feel that need to be addressed, that are issues of justice, that your other Christian sisters and brothers may disagree with, that are not issues of faith, they're issues of ideology. Stand up for those things. But in standing up for those things, do not invoke God. And just be honest. This is what I believe. This is what I feel. And this is what I am standing up for. We're going to continue to talk a little bit more about what we addressed in the sermon yesterday tomorrow. Until then, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May heaven continue to smile upon you and grant you peace. God bless you.